Hello, folks. Hello, hello. Happy Monday to you all. And yeah, good morning. Those of us on the western side of the country and maybe easing into afternoon for those farther to the east here. My name is Tamara Connell. I'm really excited for today's conversation, and I thank you for taking some time out of your day to join us. I'm joined today here by Katie Harper, Matt McCulloch, and Pong Leung, and yeah, really excited to talk about aligning allies for a resilient future. Just as we kick off here, I just wanted to say a quick, oops, I went too fast there. Just a quick thanks to our funders, the North Family Foundation and the Travesia Family Foundation, two of the groups that help to make these public events possible. Thank them for their continued support of us and many other good organizations doing excellent climate work across the country. Yeah, I could just settle into a little bit of a land acknowledgement. For me, I'm calling in today from the shared, unceded ancestral and traditional territory of many First Nation groups. In this particular area where I'm situated, it's several groups. It's the Coquitlam, the Tsleil-Waututh, Musqueam, Squamish, Katzie, Kwantlen, Kikite, and Stelo nations who have called this area home for many thousands of years and have stewarded this particular place, which we now colonially know as Port Moody in British Columbia. And on the heels of Mother's Day, I was reflecting a little bit this morning in terms of, at least Mother's Day in Canada, how I did spend some time with my own mother yesterday, and I spent some time thinking about other mothers and other matriarchs, let's say, who have helped me in my own growth and sort of supported me in a number of ways. But yet I didn't actually think about Mother Nature, and I don't mean that in like a cheesy way, but I didn't actually yesterday spend much time reflecting on that particular relationship, and so I can already sense into myself about a bit of a space for relearning or unlearning some norms around who we associate with as our mother and our support and our the systems and how we include natural systems within that. And when I did take some time to reflect on it, I started to think about some of the lessons, the leadership lessons that the natural systems have taught me. And some of the ones that came to mind were around being comfortable with change, being flexible and adaptive and finding new ways, and to persevere through different challenges and different maybe expected or unexpected things that have come my way. And yeah, it was just a moment for me to settle into thinking about what I've learned from nature and our natural systems, and was wondering if we can, collectively think about bringing in that sort of that love and that reverence that we have for mothers and motherhood, and try and bring that a little bit into incorporating the natural systems and our planet into that. Yeah, as I said, I saw my mother yesterday. I saw my mother also 2 weeks ago because she celebrated her 70th birthday, and my two brothers and I, who I'll just say that we're quite different. We come from the same parents, but we've taken different paths and don't have honestly all that much in similarities other than our DNA, I would say. But we did work together reasonably well to help celebrate her on her 70th just recently, and to come together and have a little surprise. And so I feel like in times where it's important, we can come and work across differences to find or to create something special. And that was one of those cases. And it brings me essentially to our topic today, which is around thinking about how do we work with our other siblings, in the broader sense, our siblings on this planet, our other human beings that are here. How do we work with them across differences to really protect ourselves, protect the planet, and to find a better future? So kind of an interesting parallel of thoughts today as we settle in. I'll just share a tiny bit about ASI for those of you that are new to us. We are a registered charity that works nationally, and fundamentally, we believe that the transition to a sustainable future will require new and different forms of leadership. And so all of our work is organized around trying to build new leadership competencies, which we call transition leadership competencies. And we offer our work through 4 different program areas. So we have leadership courses. We have a members network that you can join if you're a sustainability professional or have some sort of sustainability purview within your job. We do custom engagements, which essentially means we'll build custom products and services for different groups that work specifically for them. And then we also do research, often on the topics of transition leadership or workforce development related to climate. That's just a little bit about us for those of you that might be new. Today the flow of the event is relatively straightforward. We're just going to do some welcoming and housekeeping, which we're at right now. I'll have our 3 fantastic speakers introduce themselves, and then we'll have a little panel discussion with a quick closeout at the end. So we'll be off and on our way in the next 50 minutes. Just some expectations in terms of how to engage today. So just as a flag, we won't be taking questions at the end. You're welcome to put them in the chat as you go through. If you have questions that pop up, some of the speakers might be able to answer them in the chat as you go through. But yeah, we'll ask you to try and remain muted as much as possible, just in case there's any unexpected fire alarms or barking dogs or anything in the background that might take us off course. So you're invited to remain muted, but you're welcome to turn your cameras on if you'd like. It can be fun to see some faces out there in the crowd as you wish. And yeah, feel free to engage in the chat. And we just ask that you be respectful and try and lead with curiosity as you do so. So thanks for that. If you do have any questions as we go along, both Taylor and Aaron, they both have ASI at the front of their names, so you can reach out to one of them if you have any challenges. So thank you. So yeah, let's jump in. Maybe we'll bring up, we'll settle the slides down and we'll pin some folks. So yeah, so I'd like to welcome to the stage, so to speak, a couple of folks. So we've got Pong Leung, Sustainability Advisor with Travesia Partners, Katie Harper, the advisor with Talk Climate to Me, and Matt McCulloch, who's the head of decarbonization and energy transition at Norda Stelo. Thanks. Hi, folks. Look at you. Here you are. Let's kick us off with just an introduction. So just share maybe a little bit about yourself and your work, and maybe a little comment or two about what sustains you or motivates you in the work that you do. Maybe I'll pass to Pong and then Katie and then Matt.
Yeah, thanks, Tamara, and thanks everyone for joining us. So my name is Pong Leung. I have a little company called Travesia Partners, and we do work in terms of strategy and around sustainability and kind of facilitation and collaboration around those topics. So my journey, I have a business degree originally, so way back when, and I, as a business student, I was interested. I read a book called The Ecology of Commerce, which by Paul Hawken, which I'm sure many of you are familiar with, and that was the first time that I, at business school at that time didn't have anything around sustainability, not like today. So it was the first time that I ever heard it, laid out the framing of, actually business and environment can be good for each other. It's doing well by doing good. And that really intrigued me. So, and I think that kind of started off my path around working on these topics. And of course, the more you learn, the more opportunities that you see, but also, the more work that has to be done as well. So that took me to do my graduate studies in Leung University in Sweden, which was great to have that international perspective. Came back to Canada to launch a nonprofit organization called The Natural Step with a good friend of mine, and which was very much focused on how do we bring science-based thinking on sustainability and into business and into their operations. And then that was on a kind of a company by company basis. But then over time, our work has transitioned, or at least my work has transitioned more towards collaboration for sustainability, because oftentimes companies can only do so much alone before they reach a point where they say, well, you know what, we need to start working on things at a systemic level. So then kind of begs the question of how do we do that? Like, how do we work together across organizations to address some of the big challenging issues that we face? And maybe I'll just stop there, and I think I'll talk a little bit more about that type of work in a little bit later on. But that's yeah, that's a bit about me.
Awesome.
So
Thanks
was
so
that,
much,
and
Paul.
what keeps me motivated?
Yeah, what's there anything that you that keeps you motivated in your work?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think, well, of course, I have kids now. That's always a big motivation to think about
Mm,
their future. And I think, what often keeps me motivated is really working with really good people, and the work that they're doing. So, no one's an island, and we got to do this together. And when we show up with enthusiasm and a desire to, to kind of engage, I think that it's not just motivating for yourself, it's really motivating for others. I feel like we have to remember that, because how you show up is a reflection of how others will show up with you, right? So
mm. Yeah, great point. Thanks, Pong. Yeah, welcome. Katie, over to you.
Hello, glad to be here. My name's Katie. I use she, her pronouns. I'm joining from my home in Toronto, which is in Treaty 13 territory. And um, I mean, just to start off, Tamara, how you were saying the nature, like the connections to nature, is certainly part of the sustaining piece for me. And I feel so grateful to be on these beautiful lands and to discover the signs of spring. This morning, I saw an abundance of warblers in my local park and had to peel myself away to come to my to come to my desk. And just thinking about, you talking about perseverance, thinking about these little birds traveling all of this way,
Mm,
tiny little things, and man, if they can keep going, despite all of the buildings they run into and all of the challenges, bird-proof your windows. We can certainly stay in the fight. My background is I started off in science. I love nature. I grew up on the shores of Lake Huron and picking up fossils and stuff. And I thought, well, that's cool. Let me do something with that. So I studied biology. And actually, when I was in grad school, uh, someone from the business school was looking for TAs that were outside of the sector, and
mm,
so Pong, it reminded me of your story there. The Ecology of Commerce was one of those books where people were like, "Hey, look, this is a really interesting thing. Business might consider these so-called externalities." And so I had the chance to TA a course called Social Context for Business, and that was really my introduction to hearing about climate solutions and just sort of sustainability solutions that were coming in from different corners of the world that I might have imagined originally. So from there, when I moved to Toronto, I briefly worked at the David Suzuki Foundation, kind of trying to do some stuff around sustainable business, and then jumped into the corporate sector. I was working at the then Sears Canada at sorry, that I'm dating myself a little bit. But we had actually at the time a really ambitious climate action vision, and we're doing some interesting things looking at both our internal operations and how we bring in products, and also how do we engage employees. And it was the engaging employees that was the thing that was really the thing for me. I think the through line for my career has been around how do we bring people into this, make a big tent, help people see the connections to their own issues, their own lives, whatever they care about, and have a vision for, hey, we can do better. So I think
mm.
I'll end by saying from there I moved to community work, and we've been doing a project called Talk Climate to Me for the last several years. And I'll chat a bit more about that today. But that's the other part I think that really sustains me, is this idea that the sense of possibility, we can take climate action and it makes life better. And so all of those co-benefits and the people that are working on creating a more just, a healthier world, a greener world, that is motivating for me as well. Pass it over to Matt.
Yeah.
Katie. And thanks everyone for joining today. Just great to have you. So yeah, Matt McCulloch. As Tamara mentioned, help lead the decarb but energy transition activities for a Canadian engineering firm called Norda Stelo. And I am also outgoing board chair of ASI, so very proud to be able to participate in this discussion today. And yeah, just quickly about me and what drives me. Um, I'll make this quick, but sort of for me, the beginnings weren't environmentalism. I moved from Toronto to a small town outside of outside of Edmonton called Drayton Valley, to hook up with a bunch of people who were leading a climate and energy advocacy group. And I didn't really know anything about all of that. All I knew is that they were really smart, and that they were doing something really important. And I took environmental engineering, the engineering because I could, the environment side because it was it contributed to society, and that was what really sort of has driven me all along, is just more from a social perspective, to be honest, and then it graduated into an environmental perspective. So my career has been around sort of climate and energy, with a big focus on technology. And I'll speak a bit more to sort of a bit of that arc. Won't bore you with it, but to sort of let you know sort of where I am today, based on that. But yeah, so that's a, so what, that is what drives so the foundation. But I mean, I guess being more specific, obviously the urgency from a climate crisis perspective drives me, but also what really drives me, and I get quite, as I've been focused on for some time, is the development of the pace of development of solutions. And that's the space that I sort of try to occupy and advance. So for me, I use acceleration, I use rapid, there's pace, those sort of types of terms a lot, because for me, it is about the development and deployment of solutions as quick as possible. And so that's what gets me excited, and kind of what I do as well. So, which hopefully is for everyone. Hopefully, what you do is what excites you. Thanks.
Absolutely. Amazing. Well, thank you. Thank you all three of you for joining us today. And yeah, really excited to dive into your experiences. Maybe Pong, I'll start with you in terms of the first question. I know because we've known each other for a little while, I know that you've worked with a bunch of different clients and partners, businesses, governments, NGOs, different communities. And I'd just like to invite you to share a time when you helped to bring together groups that came from very different perspectives regarding climate action. And, like, what did that look like for you? And what did you learn about helping to create or co-create solutions together when people don't always see eye to eye on a particular topic?
Yeah, I can do that. One of the initiatives that I've been involved with over the past decade or so, I think that speaks to this is called the Energy Futures Lab in Alberta. So the Energy Futures Lab, for those that may not have heard about it, is an innovation space, I would say, that is bringing together a diverse range of people from across Alberta's energy system. So ranging from civil society, like the Pembina Institute, and to Suncor, big oil and gas majors, to clean tech startups, to people in different levels of government, municipalities, both the big ones, Calgary and Edmonton, but also rural municipalities, and so on and so forth. And it's basically a really broad range. And it wasn't framed specifically and on purpose around climate, so the way we made the invitation was very, very, very broad, and the way we framed it was around how can we leverage Alberta's leadership in energy to create the energy system that the future requires of us, which kind of obviously begs the question of, well, what is the energy system that the future requires of us, right? Like, we then open up a space to invite people to say, well, you tell us what that is. What are you hearing, and what do you think it should be? So I think maybe that's one thing, is like, when you're looking at diverse perspectives and want to take action together, I think it's sort of like very much framed around an invitation, like at the end of the day, it's like you can't just cram people in a room and then force people to work together when they don't want to. So I think that's sort of like table stakes, is sort of say, the people that we invite have to see that there's an issue here that actually needs solving, and that they see that they have to work with others to solve it, right? So I think we have to say, hey, look, do we have that at the very least? and how can we frame something that invites those types of people in, that see the challenge and also want to work together, even though what they bring and their perspectives of what the solutions are could be vastly different. So I think maybe that's just one thing. So we framed it up that way, quite broad, and very much was very active. So we made a big invitation out, and then people started applying, and then we also of course looked at the diversity of perspectives and saying, are there any gaps in these perspectives that we have, and then actively sought out people with those perspectives to invite them in. But I think always with the mindset that we wanted people that wanted to work on this together, so I think maybe one thing we were told to sort of share tools. So one tool that I oftentimes refer to is called the spectrum of allies. If you think about a semicircle, like a semicircle divided into 5 parts, where you have kind of like the range of support for the topic or a challenge that you're working on. So from actively opposing you, to passively opposing you, to people that are neutral, to people that passively support you, and people that are actually supporting you, actively supporting you. And oftentimes we have a tendency to want to get like the flip people, five spaces to go from people that oppose us actively to like, no, we got to make them our allies. Yeah, well, it generally doesn't happen. So, I think the challenge is how do we identify those people and just like that are one square that we want to move over. So, that are passively supportive, but then that you want to move over to actively supportive, or that are opposing you actively, but you just want to, have them oppose you passively instead, for example. So so I think maybe that's one thing, is like our invitation was very much about those that saw the challenge and wanted to work on it. Although they had, again, from oil and gas to clean tech to municipalities to civil society and so on and so forth. So maybe the second thing I'll say is that when we actually got those people together, we didn't jump into doing. Like, we didn't jump into, okay, let's start doing together, because of course we don't know each other. So I think maybe that's the second thing, is we took time very intentionally to actually to be very mindful about how we were talking and listening to each other, and to actually get to know each other. So the second tool maybe I'll share is okay, maybe I'll just describe it in not necessarily as a tool, but you can think about when people come into a room, there's different stages of how they show up and talk and listen to each other. So oftentimes you come into a room and you have a position, right? You have a position, and what you want to do is like just tell other people what they should know. Like the downloading space where you say, I'm not even interested in what you have to say. I just want to tell you what I think, right? So that, can I go? So that's kind of oftentimes when we come into a space where we disagree with others, maybe that's how we show up. But then at a certain point, we get into a debate mode, right? Where you are downloading, but at least you're opening to listening to facts and arguments. Oftentimes conflictively, right? You're debating, you're still trying to win. But then we then purposely and mindfully say, hey, look, you be aware when you're in that space, because what we need to do is actually move into a more empathetic space, where we get into a dialogue space, where we're actually not just sharing what we think, but we're actively putting ourselves into the position of what others are. How are they experiencing this? What are their experiences, and how are they feeling? As they bring this, as they talk to me, or as they bring their experiences to this space. And then ultimately where we want to get to, and it takes time, is a generative dialogue space, where we are not listening and working as individuals. We're actually working from the perspective of a future us, where we say, what is it that we want to create together, right? So we move from us, you and I, to an us perspective. And but the reason I share that is that, one, you can actually show that. You can say, hey, look, where are you showing up, right now, right? You just so people can be mindful. You're not saying this is where ultimately we need to get here if we want to actually address this challenge together. But and it's going to take time. But where are you right now? And so I think those kind of things are, so people can be mindful how they're showing up. So I think that's something that we did very intentionally. So we invited people to be very mindful of how they were showing up and how they were talking and listening to each other. And of course, through exercises, experiential and knowledge sharing and bringing different perspectives, we're able to slowly move into a co-creative generative space, where we then ask people the question that we started with, like, well, what is the energy system that the future requires of us, right? And themselves as a group actually identified a net zero feature as one of the features that the whole team, that the whole group agreed to. And it wasn't the only thing, but it was one of the key things that it took us a while to get there. But I think the whole group, all 40 people in the room, signed off on, like a net zero future for Alberta is actually what we want, something we want to create for a number of reasons, from future of our kids and the environment, but also meeting, investor expectations and global competitiveness and all that sort of stuff. But then what we did in terms of getting into an action space is then we just invited people to say, well, what are things that then we might want to try together to help co-create, like to help create that future, right? And it wasn't necessarily that we had to agree on the suite of things that we were doing. It's just that what are the things that we wanted to try together? And then we broke off into little teams. And the things we tried were, there was a huge range. Our portfolio was quite broad, from looking at reducing methane emissions, which is a big, obviously important piece of work, to EV charging stations in northern Alberta to close that gap, because there's at that time there was no EV charging stations in northern Alberta. Looking at battery metals, right? How do we leverage current infrastructure to access battery metals? Which there's actually a tremendous, large deposit of lithium in oil reservoirs, I guess, where there's, like the pumps, they pump out not just oil, but the kind of the water, but in the water, there's actually tremendous amounts of lithium. And so what's a technology that could mine that using existing infrastructure? So I think a very, it's the kind of as a place to play in the energy future, right? So anyway, so there's a range of these different types of things, but people then kind of engaged on where they thought it was important to engage. And it wasn't like we said we have to agree on everything. It's like, sometimes our energy doesn't take us to where others want to take them, but generally we agree that this is the future we want to create. And we very much thought about it as prototypes, as pilots, so things that we would try, do, learn from, bring back to the team, and then say, hey, look, is this something there? Do we want to scale and support it? Do we want to just drop it? Sometimes it's not the right time, so do we want to park it, until the conditions change, and so on and so forth. So I think, and then we would just iterate that process. So maybe I'll stop there. I don't know if my 2 minutes are up, but but the whole point is just, the frame, frame a broad question, be very mindful of how you're engaging with each other, take time to actually, to do the soft stuff, to get to actually build trust and relationships, co-create and explore some possible futures that you want to, build together, and then allow people to kind of work and take action on where they feel the most confident, and think about things from a portfolio perspective. Like, we don't need one solution. We need a portfolio of things that we want to try, and that we support the things that give us, that we're hearing back, and to say there's good possibility or actually do more here. So I mean, I'll just stop there.
Thank you. That's thanks for sharing that. I feel like I could talk about that design all day long. But maybe just briefly, Pong, I'm curious to get a feel for how long was that period of time to go from people entering the room together and feeling like they have enough trust to co-create a vision of the future? Like, what kind of time duration are we talking about here?
Yeah, I mean, we did it through the space of I think it was just a few days. Like, there was we had an initial 2.5, 3 day workshop, which I think mainly the focus was on that. And then the second workshop was where we got into more, I guess, a more portfolio development. I think so. But even then, you could probably, I would say maybe a day. You got to spend some time, but I don't think you don't want to spend too much time, because there's also a tension in these types of initiatives between process people and action people. those that are, like kind of say, like, let's take time to do the process right. But others, let's get into action. So you have to be able to build in opportunities to to do both. So even in that first workshop, we created, an early portfolio of things where people wanted just to get down to action right away. So I wouldn't, but the more I would say at least take some time, because what we generally do is take no time. I mean, I think it's like what we want to do is like people want to jump right into action, but it's like, well, what are we doing together? Like, and why? And like it's like we don't even trust each other. Really, we don't even know each other. So how in the world can we really work together? Especially if you're coming from different organizations, right? So
yeah.
But I wouldn't say take too long, but I would take some. Like I would say, even if it's just half a day where maybe it's probably enough. And then you kind of get a sense of where the room is. But a half a day to a day, let's say.
Yeah, great. It's really practical. Thank you. I appreciate it. Katie, let's shift to you. So yeah, so you talked earlier about your course, the Talk Climate to Me opportunity, and yeah, I'd be curious to have you just share a little bit more about that. So yeah, like trying to understand why is talking about climate so important, and how does that connect to building allyship?
Sure. Yeah. And thanks, Pong. That's such a great, what a neat project, and I've admired it from afar. And it's cool to hear a little bit more about the ins and outs. And I think particularly that piece around building trust and the relationships is I'm sure Matt will talk about this as well, but the at the end of the longer I'm around, the more it seems like community is the answer, and like building relationships is the answer to most of these challenges. So that's cool to hear about. Tamara, thanks for your question. So we've been doing this course for the last few years called Talk Climate to Me, and it started out, it was billed as a fun, free, unscary climate education experience for women and allies, which is a bit of a mouthful, but where it came from was this kind of initial recognition of two things. One, as Pong was saying, in the spectrum of allies, looking for who is kind of the most movable. And it turned out that women tended to be more concerned about climate or express more of a concern about climate than men. There was also a gap in confidence. So people would say, if you polled men and women, who knows who can answer the question, what fundamentally is causing climate change? If you looking for burning fossil fuels, I guess if we go really fundamentally, we could talk about our disconnection from the earth and colonial systems that, create these extractive economies and so on. But in terms of just answering the question, hey, it's burning fossil fuels. Men and women are pretty much equal in their ability to answer that. But if you ask how confident they feel, women way underscore themselves. And so we thought, okay, wait a second. There's this group this group of potential allies that cares about this issue, but doesn't feel confident talking about it. And then there was one third thing that helped shape this, which it was, the 4 fields of conversation. That's awesome. There's this thing called the spiral of silence, and I'm curious, maybe just like in the audience, throw an emoji in the chat or something if you have heard of this before. But the spiral of silence is basically this idea that when we hear other people talking about something, it signals to us that, oh, this is a thing in our society, in our community. And conversely, if we don't hear other people talking about it, it must not be important. Well, the weird thing is we don't hear people talking about climate that much for lots of reasons. Partly there's the confidence thing, partly there's this perception that that you have to be a scientist to do it. Partly there's this feeling of overwhelming guilt that many people experience, and this idea that, well, I can't actually speak up unless I'm perfect, which is frankly a narrative that serves the interests who don't want us to take climate action. But for all of those reasons, we don't hear other people talking about climate. I'm going to throw a chart, something in the chat there, that's a neat series of interactive charts, say that basically the through line is more people care about climate change than you think. And there's a series of studies that have been done all the way around the world. This is replicated. And in every case, you'll ask people, do you care about climate? And whatever percentage will say, yes, I care about it. And then they ask, and do you think your neighbors care? Or do you see other people around you? And surprise, surprise, the second number is always lower. This was replicated in 125 countries, and there was every single country, there was a gap. In one of the first studies, I think that's mentioned in that Hannah Ritchie summary, it was actually, would you donate 1% of your salary, which is a big ask. That's not just, do you want to see other people take action on climate? That's like, are you going to put something on it? And around the world, it was 69%. Interestingly, higher in developing countries that are on the front lines of climate impact and also have done the least to cause climate change in the first place. So we can see the equity pieces there. But every country, including Canada, there was about double as many people said, I would do this thing, but I don't think others are doing this. So that spiral of silence is really interesting, but it actually has implications, because it's not just people around us that don't hear it. It's decision makers, it's company leaders, and so on. People who have high leverage in terms of being able to reshape the systems that we are embedded inside, and that we fundamentally need to shift if we're going to transition to a clean energy future. One recent example that I think is really interesting is they asked religious leaders in the United States, and again, consistently, these ministers were finding that, or were underestimating how much their own congruence believed quote in climate, ascribed it to be an issue worth talking about, and when they heard that actually this is something that is apparent, and it is a real issue, and lots of people care about this, collectively they all felt, oh, maybe this is in alignment with my theological views, maybe we should be talking about this more. So I'm just gonna take a sip of water here. That's once I start talking. So all of these factors came into play to say, well, wait a second, what if we helped bring this group of allies, women who are movable, interested, but maybe not feeling confident? What if we said, well, let's give you the basics about climate change so that you feel confident. Let's remind you that you don't have to be perfect in order to have a stake in this and have a voice. Let's also remind you that you are a trusted messenger to all of your people, whether that's the playground, parents at the playground, at school pickup, or in your workplace, or among your family members and friends. And so we've been doing this course. It's a 3-part course. We actually just ran the last cohort recently, so we're putting it on pause, but you can still find lots of stuff online at talkclimatetome.ca, I think. Yeah, it's been really neat. People have gone through that, and they told us over 90% of people who had taken the course said, yes, I took an action, and that might have been talking to someone, but it might have also been getting involved in a political campaign. Lots of people told us, I was never involved. Oh, thanks, Taylor. I was never involved in political action before, but I saw that I could do this. We've had people who got involved with groups, grassroots groups like Canadian Association of Physicians for the Environment, which is a great group of doctors as advocates, or For Our Kids, which is a really neat group of parents who are concerned about climate, and many others, to get out and start sharing their stories and their concerns with decision makers and other community members. So yeah, maybe I'll leave it there. But yeah, I would say the one of the neatest things about this idea about building allyship is that actually there's so many potential allies already out there. And just like Pong was saying, we don't need to focus on the unmovables. Just focus on creating, making space for the people who already do care to find their way in, find out how this connects to what they care about, and build a sense of agency that we can do something and we can make a difference. And then we've solved climate change. No, I'm just kidding. But at least that opens the door to some real action. So I'll pause there just so we can have time for more of a conversation, but excited to share more stories as we go.
That's great, Katie. Thanks so much. Yeah, I've often wondered. I feel that too in workshops when we talk to people about like what are your what's your competency rate? If you rate yourself in terms of your competency around leading towards a sustainable future, people will always rate themselves higher than their organizations, like their peers around them. And I've often thought like, why? Yeah, why is that? And how might that look if it was different? If I felt like I was surrounded by people who were talking about their care around climate or their concern or their willingness and ability to take action on climate, like how might that level us all up a little bit to do more and more work?
Yeah, absolutely. And also the definition of what we mean by talking climate, like it feels like it's a
Mm,
really high bar, right? I need to be perfect. I need to be doing, if I don't, only bike everywhere and eat, only cabbage or something, that I can't be part of this, which is obviously like so dated and so untrue. But that vision of like, I can only do this if I'm an environmentalist who cares, who loves like, to hug trees, that persists. That when in fact we know climate is a
mm,
justice issue. So finding ways for people to say, rooted usually in the local, I want to make sure that people in my community are not dying in heat waves. So let's get some heat pumps that have air conditioning capabilities in there as well. Or I want to make sure that kids in classrooms are not breathing in the smoke or the exhaust from cars. So let's support having electric buses and having no idle zones around schools and stuff, because actually that's a health issue. Like there's so many entry points, but often we feel like we need to be climate
mm.
spokespeople to talk about them. But actually just saying like, I care about my kids' health and my neighbor's health and having a just society for everyone, like that's still talking climate.
Yeah, absolutely. And oftentimes the more successful entry point into that
Oh my God.
conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Amazing. Well, thank you. Thanks for sharing your experience and for doing that great work. Um, in the spirit of time and just making sure that we all have a good amount of time to do a final wrap at the end, I'm going to pass this over to Matt. So, Matt, I know you've worked in, across a number of different careers or like areas of your career in terms of different industries and different businesses. And now you're leading decarbonization at Norda Stelo, as you mentioned in your intro. I'd be interested to hear if you have some examples, or at least one example of a time when when you saw the change in a group that you're working with, to seeing climate action as a burden to seeing it as an opportunity. And how did that? Have you noticed a time when that happened, and like what led that to be that? Like what made that possible?
Thank you for the question, Tamara, and just so awesome to hear Pong and Katie, and just how you're creating the spaces for people to sort of enter into and sort of advance this whole area and agenda. Unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to answer the question as a moment. I don't think there
Mm,
has been a moment for me. In fact, the way I look at it, I kind of zoom out, and it's hard for me not to. I mean, and I'll try to be quick in the spirit of time here. But it's almost it's almost felt like it's been in reverse to that. Opportunity to burden, but we can come back to opportunity. So of course, and so when I first started, I have the luxury of having gray hair and being able to look back and being in this field my entire career. Um, and when I started out, we really were. It was all about opportunity. That's what this was all about.
mm,
And so it was about business case, because it worked with it wasn't just corporations. It was also small businesses. It was communities. But we saw a real embracing of climate action in the early 2000s. And so, there was certainly the naysayers, but even then in sort of working with, leading and facilitating sustainability workshops where you'd have kind of people against the wall, arms closed, and or a decision-making session where we're talking about the triple bottom line, eco-efficiency, these words of the 2000s, integrating it into projects, and you'd have the naysayers, and by the end of the day, they'd switched. And so I just always that was there was something interpersonal that was happening for them, but they often became the biggest champions, which I found which I found interesting. But you know, the 2000s were that decade of, okay, the strategy and the goals and the plans and internal engagement, and it was really where it's like, okay, the momentum's starting, and so real the feeling of opportunity existed there. And then even the 2000s, I feel like if the 2000s were the foundation building, the 2010s were kind of the scaffolding, where you started seeing a lot of government funding coming in, you know, supporting large scale projects. You had Trudeau coming in 2015, and then you know, that big boost, and then so it was like, okay, now we're actively building something here. Of course, I'm simplifying things, but just when I look at it, it's actually, and then 2020 hit, and everyone, so of course it was COVID, but very specifically, 2020 was also the year of net zero. And everyone started, you know, setting that ambition and goal of net zero, which was really, it was like a domino effect. And whether you know, like or not, I mean, that was great that these commitments were being made. But the reality is, that this is really hard. And I think, and it's really expensive. And so we're talking about, when we're talking about, you know, climate action, I mean, we need to be thinking in gigatons. And it is really, really expensive. And I think that reality is really sunk in. And so on the burden side, I somewhat feel like, okay, now that's actually, we're feeling this, like that tension is existing now more than ever. You know, people backing off the 2050 commitments, people saying we can't meet our 2030 commitments. And for me, I'm right in the middle of it, and understand why, based on not just the cost, but the complexities from a number of different perspectives. And so the you know, that doesn't mean that the opportunity part doesn't exist. In fact, with happening in the US, now Canada has a real opportunity. You've got all these solution providers coming to Canada based on what's happening in the US, a reshifting of alliances. And so now I think there's kind of a new opportunity, sense of opportunity that exists, you know, where we do have to demonstrate that we can grow our economy through climate, and to bring some of those naysayers over. And there's a bunch of different areas. So critical climate innovations, I kind of refer to. There's 4 different areas that I think of, but you know, and so now it's when what we have seen is a recognition for the need for collaboration to learn together. And for me, it's this idea of not just rapid advancement of solutions, but it's rapid learning. And so using what Katie and Pong they've done in creating these spaces, I think there's a real need for you know, not these big long drawn out collaborations, but quick collaborations to learn from each other, particularly those that are doing similar things across different sectors. And so for me, that's where a lot of the opportunity and the hope lies. And this is a people problem, not a technical problem. So we need social solutions. The technical solutions would come. We got to lead with the social, and that even includes bringing NGOs and corporations together. So in terms of climate allyship, you know, B2B, you know, NGO to B, you know, as well, are kind of 2 real key, and of course, communities to businesses are all critical collaborations that I think is where kind of that opportunity, that hope still sort of exists. I'll answer it that way.
Amazing. Yeah. Can I just pull on that thread a tiny bit, so that rapid learning together between different perspectives? Can you give it a little more flavor of like an example of that, or like a tool that you use or a framework that helps you to think about how to do that for others that might want to dig into that more?
I'm afraid. So I'm in the technical world. For whatever reason, I ended up being kind of an engineer, but then working with real engineers and, you know, trying to solve problems. I moved from kind of strategy. I joined an engineering firm because now it's execution. And so to answer that question, as a very specific example of what I'm trying to sort of advance is, and, you know, part of the reason I joined Norda was in the real hard to abate greenhouse gas reductions. So in those sectors where it's like they've got process emissions, they've got really challenging gas, flue gas that comes up out of their facilities, and there's no easy solution. Yet a lot of these sectors, like the different sectors, they have the same equipment, and they're doing pilots. One's doing hydrogen, one's doing carbon capture, one's doing a new process, one's doing energy efficiency kind of thing. It's like, well, that's for me a great example of let's, what have you learned? What are your problems? As far as a framework goes, don't really need to overthink it. You ask them what they need to learn. It would be my framework, and then you bring them together trying to make sure everyone's needs are met, but you can do it quickly, like let's meet for an hour or two. But to Pong's point, you need to build those relationships too, right? You just can't throw people in to this, so you have to design a way to, and frankly, dinner, coffee, beers, those are the social lubricants that help to build relationships in person as well, which is tough. That works far better, but it is a prerequisite, absolutely, to effective collaboration, which I've experienced. Yeah, so that would be my quick.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, thanks. Appreciate that. Amazing. Well, thank you, the three of you, for sharing those examples. I feel like there's like so much richness in each of them. We could spend a couple of days talking about everyone. Maybe just because we have 6 minutes to the top of the hour where we should wrap up, maybe I'll ask for a really quick final thought from each of you, just to have your voices come in one last time. And thinking about the idea of building allyship, if there's one sort of succinct piece of advice that current you, knowing what you know now in your careers and your experience, would tell a younger version of you about how to do that well and how to do that effectively, what would that succinct piece of advice be? Maybe I'll start with you. I'll do the same order. Maybe Pong, do you want to kick us off?
Yeah, I would say like get people doing something together, like creating something together as quickly as possible. Like even if it's I find that like we don't want to talk about collaboration, like I think we just want to do it. And I also find that people that's where they are at as well. I mean, so even if it's clunky up front, but to get people to start creating something, and it doesn't necessarily have to be something. It could be like creating something with Lego, or something where they're drawing a picture together. Like we ask come together and draw a picture of the current situation that we face, right? And then give everyone a pen, and they just, it's something where they're just creating something together right away. I find that's I think it's really useful, and it's sometimes uncomfortable because but that's okay, and that's we have to let people know that's okay. It's okay to be uncomfortable. In fact, if they're not uncomfortable, then that's a problem. So we're not doing anything different, right? The discomfort comes from trying something new. So I would say that maybe as a quick thing. I have to stop there.
Thank you. Yeah, Katie.
There's a lot. I think we like listening more and looking for common ground. As Pong said, a lot of us start with the kind of download, and the information deficit model was, if you just know enough, if I just tell you the information, then you'll get it, and then you'll come on board. But we know that in Canada, a lot of people are not feeling heard and are not, don't feel like they have a lot of agency. And so listening both for what are the shared values and getting curious about that, and also for where there are opportunities to build a sense of agency, I think is really important. I think at the end of the day, this, and I'm maybe talking more about the sort of community level versus say like the systems that Matt and Pong are maybe working in, but the sense of belonging, the sense of agency, I think are two really critical criteria for people to actually like get going with things.
Great. Thank you. Matt?
So the questions around the ingredients for sort of getting collaboration going and successful collaboration, Tamara?
Sure. Yeah, if you were to give yourself a piece of advice around how to be more effective at building allyship.
Really knowledge, yeah. Asking the right questions and listening, I guess, would be, some of the questions you have to be, quick think those through. But if we're talking about unlikely allies, which I think to Pong's point, that's kind of, where the change happens. So, so finding those unlikely allies. Being here in Alberta, I really try to do that. I don't have to go as far as maybe as other people do. Yeah, but I'll leave it at that.
Amazing. Well, thank you all three. Such great work that you're all doing, and yeah, thank you for dedicating all that time and attention to the work that you're doing, and just sharing about that today. Yes, heard lots of good stories and lots of the final advice around getting people to work together, like to do something together as quickly as possible when building building collective action, listening more for shared values, and asking the right questions, and listening. So thank you for those bits of wisdom. We'll move towards a wrap here, just because we're 2 minutes to the top of the hour, although I feel like we could definitely continue chatting more. But I just wanted to say a big thanks to the folks who are here on the call, and thanks to those who will be listening to this afterwards as well. And thanks for engaging with ASI. If you haven't already, you're welcome to connect with us in different ways on LinkedIn and in our newsletter. Taylor has put some links in the chat. We do have a form that you're able to share some feedback in. That's the top link in the one that she sent, but it'll also come out by email in a follow-up email that we'll send to all the registrants, also with a link to the recording in case you needed to catch a little bit more. A big thank you to the team, to Aaron and Taylor for supporting today, and big thanks to our three speakers, Pong, Katie, and Matt. It's been a pleasure, and hope to talk to you all soon.